Okay, and we're back. 3 years later, I'm back with a new lecture. I have been researching for the past few years, but I've just not put any videos out. Okay, so I'm going to start putting more videos out more consistently. And today's lecture is on the KKK and how they were directly influenced from the Black Moors in Spain. Okay, I'm going to show and read historical fact and proof, then leave it open for interpretation or hypothesis at the end of the lecture. So this one is an interesting one. It's titled The KKK and Its Black Past, okay? And to be fair, I don't think really anybody knows about this. Only select few people know about this. So before we get into it, I'm going to explain these 4 images here. The first one on the top left, as you probably know, is a recent image of the KKK from the United States. The image underneath that is from a festival in modern day Spain. The festival is called the Three Kings, and the Spanish dress up in blackface to represent one of the biblical kings, Balthazar. Okay, the wearing of the fez in that image is interesting, as that is the traditional headpiece of the Moors, whereas Balthazar is traditionally represented in old paintings as wearing a golden crown. Okay, now the image to the right of that is a portrait of a Moor from North Africa, painted around the late 1800s / early 1900s by Ludwig Deutsch, a French Austrian artist. Okay, and the blue costume to the right of that is from another festival in modern day Spain by a group called the Order of the Negro Brotherhood. Okay, as you can see, their costume is eerily similar to that of the KKK's. Okay, now that is not a coincidence, and that is where the KKK got their inspiration from, likely, as we're going to be exploring in this video. Okay, so all these 4 images are linked, and how they are linked will be more clear at the end of this video through diving into the Black Moorish origin of this festival and the costume of the Order of the Negro Brotherhood from Seville, Spain. Now, as with all Untold Black History videos, this is original research that I have done myself using a variety of primary and secondary resources, which I will be showing in the video. Okay, now let's get into it. Okay, so you might ask, how do you even relate the KKK to Black European Moors when the KKK committed so many atrocities against Black people? Okay, well, it started, the idea and the inspiration for this video started when I saw this image. Okay, now this image shows what we consider a Black man standing with the KKK at what looks to be a ceremony. Okay, the image was taken in Mississippi in 1950, and Dr. Spinks, who was the imperial emperor of that regional KKK organization, in his speech there that night said, and I quote, "There aren't any Negroes within miles of here tonight." Okay, I find that statement particularly interesting, as there is what looks like to be a Negro stood right there in this image. Okay, so maybe he just didn't see him, or maybe the connotation is deeper, because we actually know that Black people have been referred to as many different names historically, such as Indian, Black, Colored, Moor, Negro, Ethiopian, African American, Aboriginal, West Indian, for example. And according to law, each designation has seen different treatment of the people who recognize themselves as one of these labels in a respective jurisdiction. Okay, this can be seen in the Sundry Moore's Law case, where Black slaves freed themselves from slavery through proving themselves as Moors from the Moroccan Empire in court in North America, therefore not being subject as Negroes to the Negro Acts, okay, in the United States law. So I'll probably make another video on that in the subject. So ultimately, was the man in this image not classed as a Negro? Was he protected that night? Or did the assumably racist KKK members just decide not to harass him or kill him for whatever reason that night? Well, I don't know, but it is that image which got me looking into this subject, and it's what led me to find a connection between the KKK and the Black Moors. So in this video, we're going to be proving that connection through looking at secondary and primary sources. For example, the book The Amazing 100 Facts About the Negro, and a Spanish source explaining the Negro Brotherhood. Then we're going to look at Moorish Spain and the definition of a Moor, and we'll look at similar customs between the earlier Negro Brotherhood and the later founded KKK, before we look into the early Spanish influence in the United States, and then finish up the lecture. And here is another image I saw online which I want to highlight as it may be relevant to the lecture. Okay, it's an image of the KKK gifting 106-year-old Jack Riddle and his wife a gift in 1948. Now, I'm not highlighting the fact that the two elders are Black African American or American Indian, because they may have been coerced into taking this image. What is of interest though is that on first look, though less conclusive than the last image I showed, a man behind one of these masks seems to be dark-skinned himself. Now, if we zoom in and compare the faces, we see light-skinned faces around the eyes on the three people on the left-hand side, okay? However, the final person stood on the right seems to have a darker hue around his eyes. Now, considering the last image that we showed at the start showed a black man at a KKK ceremony in normal clothing, would it be so far-fetched to imagine that some black people were also under the outfits? If so, this would go against everything we've seen and believe about this organization. Now, regardless of the origin and backstory of those two images that I showed, we will now look at conclusive evidence to show how the origins of the KKK is historically directly related to what we call the Black Moors in Spain. Now, it starts with a book I came across a few years ago by the great author J.A. Rogers. The book is called 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, and while studying and living in Europe in the early 20th century, Rogers learnt about the Negro Brotherhood in Seville, Spain. The bottom right hand corner shows an image taken from that book. The image is of a street procession by the Negro Brotherhood in Seville, Spain. And look at the outfit. The outfit that they wear is exactly the same as the KKK's. However, this organization predates the KKK by 472 years. Looking more into this Negro Brotherhood, we first have to do some fact discerning. As with much black history, there is some misinformation. On the left hand side, there is a BBC article, and on the right hand side, we have an article from El Español, a Spanish newspaper, about this brotherhood. Okay, now the BBC article on the left says that the organization was founded in 1391 in Seville by African slaves. Now, according to mainstream history, the Spanish African slave trade did not start until the late 1400s/early 1500s, after Columbus apparently discovered America. Okay, the same Columbus who, by the way, had a black Moorish navigator, but we'll do another video on that. Okay, so why is this BBC article so quick to call the founders of the Spanish Negro Brotherhood slaves if Spanish slavery did not start until 100 years later? Okay, what is more likely is that the founders of this organization were free blacks or Moors in Spain. Okay, and this can be proven by looking at the Spanish source on the right hand side. Now, in Spanish, that says El periódico español dice que la hermandad también se llamaba la Hermandad de los Morinos, o de los Negros. So the Spanish article says the Negro Brotherhood was also known as the Brotherhood of the Morinos. The Morinos. And Morinos is another word for Moors or Moros. Okay. Now, this would make more sense as there was a large Moorish presence in Spain up until around the 1500s after the expulsion of Moors and Jews from Spain and Portugal and surrounding regions. Okay, now also considering the fact that this Negro Brotherhood organization was founded in 1391, way before the expulsions, okay, that would make more sense. Okay, in addition, this is the Spanish source, so it is more reliable. It's closer to a primary source, though the article also does refer to the founders of the organization as Negro slaves. The article clearly states that the organization in the past was known as both the Brotherhood of the Morinos and the Brotherhood of the Negroes, implying that the word Moors and Negroes was interchangeable during that historical period in Spain. Now, for the people in the back who are saying, but Moor doesn't mean black person, well, not only have I just showed a Spanish source saying La Hermandad de los Marinos, which means the Brotherhood of the Moors, was also referred to as La Hermandad de los Negros, which means the Brotherhood of the Negroes. I have also put up a etymology dictionary source on this slide, which refers to 16th and 17th century literature, where it quotes Moor in the Middle Ages was a synonym for Negro. So I've highlighted that part in yellow as well. Okay, now there's so much more evidence to show that the Moors of antiquity, the Moors in the Middle Ages and prior, or at least the majority of them, were what we call black people today. But that's another subject, and I'll probably do another video on that also. Now, just delving into a bit of Moorish Spanish history, this image shows the year 1492, in which the last Moorish stronghold in Spain, Granada, was conquered. Okay, following this, many of the remaining Moorish Muslim inhabitants of Spain were then either forced to convert to Christianity, sold into slavery into the Caribbean and Americas, or fled back into Africa and the surrounding areas. Okay, that's an interesting topic as well. Okay, now it's important to note that at this time, many of the explorers and navigators commissioned by the Spanish crown to explore the New World were Moors, such as Pedro Alonso Nino, who was Columbus's navigator. It's interesting to note that Pedro was trialed by the Spanish king Ferdinand II on return to Spain from the Americas, being accused of not sharing his fair share of loot with the king. Now we are going to briefly look into the similar customs between the Spanish Negro Brotherhood and the KKK, starting off with the outfit. Okay, so we've already established that the outfit of the KKK is very similar, if not identical, to that of the Spanish Negro Brotherhood. This can be seen again by looking at the two images. The left image shows the KKK in America, and the right image shows a recent Negro Brotherhood street procession in Seville, Spain. The KKK outfit even has a circular logo shape with 4 sections on it, just like that of the Negro Brotherhoods. Now we can also see that the Negro Brotherhood carry crosses. Is this where the KKK got their cross holding antics from also? So both groups wear large white sheets with a circular logo and carry crosses. Are there any more similarities? Of course there is. So looking at this now, symbolism, cross and stick with fire. Okay, yes, both groups carry candles or sticks with fire. Again, on the right we have the Negro Brotherhood with their candles, and on the left the KKK with theirs. Is this a coincidence, or is there a deeper meaning to why the KKK also adopted the Negro Brotherhood's ceremonial customs in addition to their outfits? A Hermano Antonio, a Mr. Antonio who lives in Seville, where the Negro Brotherhood procession takes place, and whose family is linked to the Brotherhood up to this day in Spain, is quoted as saying that among the brothers of the organization, there are Africans and Latin Americans. In fact, until the 19th century, white brothers did not appear in the procession. Okay, so that quote from Mr. Antonio, in short, what he is saying is that white Spanish people did not start to take part in this festival in Seville until the 1800s, which means that it was likely predominantly black / dark-skinned Spaniards carrying out this festival as late as the early to mid 1800s. Okay, now the reason I have images of Spanish Texas and America on the screen is to show that some of these black Spaniards would have been helping to establish the New World in America up until the 1800s. Texas was part of Spain from 1690 until 1821. Louisiana was Spanish Louisiana until 1801. Spanish California until 1822. The Moorish influence in Spanish America is already proven by people like Pedro Alonso and Esteban the Black, who were some of the first Spaniards in the Americas, also being Moors. Okay, and according to Mr. Antonio, there were still black Spaniards in the Negro Brotherhood in Spain as late as the 1800s. With the KKK being formed in 1865, were any black Spaniard descendants directly or indirectly involved in the founding of the KKK, and what would be a motive for that? Well, I don't know. I'm just posing these questions based on what we've seen. Okay, and whether they were or not involved, the influence is undeniable. I want to shout out Rod Hayes for this image. So he's the person that shared this image and essentially made me look more into this topic, because he talks about the hidden black hand in America a lot. So when I started to research this image, I came across the image that made me do more research and which has led to this lecture. So Rod Hayes was an inspiration for this lecture, so I want to shout out to him. Okay, so this is another image that was taken in the 1920s. Okay, and like I said, I saw this image because Rod Hayes shared it, and it's a group called the Moorish Zionist Temple of the Moorish Jews. Okay, so this is proof that there were black Americans who still identified as being Moors and not black, not Negro, not African American, but Moors as late as the 1920s. Okay, and as mentioned before, Moors had a different legal status to Negroes, as shown by the Sundry Moors Act and the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of the 18th century. Was it just Negroes and Indians being terrorized by the KKK, or were Moors subject to that terrorism and lynching by the KKK also? It's a common saying that a lot of dark humor contains some essence of truth to it. So maybe this Dave Chappelle skit had deeper connotation or implied meaning. So to conclude, after going over the history of the KKK's outfit and ritual and how it relates to the Spanish Negro Moorish Brotherhood, I ask, is this all merely a coincidence? The KKK committed many atrocities against black and Indian Negroes in America. So what is the true reason behind them using the same outfit and ritual as the black Spaniards did? Did they just like the Spanish Negro Brotherhood and decide to copy it? Or did this Spanish Negro Brotherhood continue into North America with the settlement of America by Portuguese and Spanish explorers, many of whom were black Moors themselves? If so, why would that organization turn into one which terrorizes people who look like them?